Good evening. Just yesterday, over in the state of Wisconsin, after a several-month-long investigation, the sheriff of Racine County went on television and he made a public presentation in which he exposed the evidence that he was able to collect regarding possible felony violations committed by the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Specifically, this evidence showed that absentee ballots were cast on behalf of nursing home residents who were too cognitively impaired to actually vote. And then furthermore, it appears that this type of nursing home election scheme is not only confined to the state of Wisconsin. That's because just a few weeks ago, over in the state of Michigan, 3 women were charged with voting fraud, and one of them was charged with fraudulently filling out ballots in the names of nursing home residents without their permission. Let's go through it all together. This is your daily Facts Matter update, and I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. And now let's begin today's discussion over in Wisconsin. So, several months ago, there was a woman in Wisconsin who just happened to discover that her elderly mother had cast a vote in the 2020 election, despite the fact that she had actually died a month earlier. And even before this elderly mother died, she was experiencing severe cognitive decline to the point that the only president that she could remember was JFK. And so in theory, this elderly mother should not have been eligible to vote, even by absentee ballot. And yet somehow, inexplicably, she was still able to cast a vote using an absentee ballot in the 2020 presidential election. And so, after the daughter discovered this fact, she took this information over to the local sheriff's office, who then started their own investigation. And after several months of looking into it, just yesterday, the sheriff of Racine County held a televised press conference where he laid out all the evidence that his office was able to uncover of felony crimes involving ballots that were sent to nursing home residents. In other words, they uncovered felony election law violations in the county of Racine. And the type of violations that they found were so severe that this is what the sheriff said as a part of that press conference. Election law statute was in fact not just broken, but shattered by members of the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Now, that is a fairly severe statement. And so what exactly did his office uncover in Racine County? Well, he took the complaint about the deceased mother who had voted in the 2020 election, and he investigated the nursing home which she was staying at, which for your reference is called the Ridgewood Care Facility. And he discovered that absentee ballots were mailed to the residents there despite the fact that they were not requested. And then furthermore, the nursing home staff, the staff at this nursing home, was empowered to fill out the ballots on behalf of the residents. And when his team went through these nursing home residents one by one, they found that out of the 42 residents who cast their ballots, 8 of them did not even possess the cognitive ability that's required to vote. And then furthermore, it's unclear whether the remaining nursing home residents who did possess the cognitive ability to vote, whether they were the ones who actually cast their own ballots or not. And so let me just reiterate exactly what the sheriff found and break it down for you point by point. To start with, the Wisconsin Elections Commission, they made the decision back in 2020 to prohibit legally required special voting deputies from entering these nursing homes. And instead, what they did is that they told the nursing home staff members to assist the residents in voting. Now, the specific law that the sheriff says was broken during this incident was the Wisconsin state statute, which is numbered 6.875, which explicitly says that special voting deputies are the only people who are authorized to assist residents in nursing homes, and that, quote, no individual who is employed or retained or within the 2 years preceding appointment has been employed or retained at a qualified retirement home or residential care facility in the municipality, or any member of the individual's immediate family may be appointed to serve as a deputy. In plain English, what that statute says is that the only people who are able to assist nursing home residents are these special deputies who are assigned by the Election Commission, not nursing home staff members or even family members. However, prior to the 2020 election, the Wisconsin Election Commission, they reached out to the Wisconsin governor and they made the request for him to suspend this requirement for nursing homes. Here's in fact what the election commissioner said at that time, which was back in March of 2020. What we are really saying here is that despite what the law says, the Election Commission is saying, in this instance, we need to have some flexibility to not follow the law. However, the governor's office, they responded to the Election Commission by saying that the governor does not have the authority to suspend voting laws, even during a public health emergency. And that is indeed the case, because according to this Wisconsin state statute, which is 12.13, quote, No election official may, in the course of the person's official duties or on account of the person's official position, intentionally violate or intentionally cause any other person to violate any election law. Violation of this provision is a Class 1 felony. And so again, in plain English, what that state statute says is that if you ask somebody to break an election law, that is a felony. And the investigators of this office, they say that when the Wisconsin Election Commission instructed the nursing home staff to violate this state law, well, that was a Class 1 felony. And so the investigators of this nursing home case, they are saying that the Wisconsin Election Commission broke this particular statute and committed a Class 1 felony when they allowed nursing home staff to fill out the ballots for nursing home residents. And according to the sheriff, according to that presentation, this Class 1 felony is punishable by a maximum sentence of 3.5 years in prison, as well as $10,000 in fines. Here's what he said specifically of this crime. We have a Wisconsin Election Commission that failed to follow the law. This starts at the top. And so, because of this unlawful advice from the Elections Commission, the investigators in this case, they alleged that dozens of residents at the Ridgewood Care Facility, residents who normally don't vote, residents whose families say that they have either no interest in voting or don't have enough cognitive ability to vote, well, they made a new request for ballots ahead of the 2020 presidential election, and they cast those ballots with the help from nursing home staff. And the details of what this help actually looked like is, to be frank with you, pretty stark. To start with, in the 2020 election, 42 of these nursing home residents cast a ballot in the election, with 38 of them having made a first-time request for a ballot, which is far, far more than typical, because according to the investigators, quote, during a presidential or non-presidential election, usually approximately 10 people will vote and 0 to 3 people will make a fresh request for an absentee ballot from the Ridgewood Care Center. And so, in the year 2020, for 42 of these residents to request ballots, well, that is obviously an anomaly. And so, after they looked into it, these investigators, they discovered that these applications to request absentee ballots, they were actually filled out by the facility staff members. And then in terms of how the voting itself was done, well, it was supervised by this nursing home's director of recreational therapy, and he told the investigators that, quote, if a resident could only point to the ballot, her staff would fill in the appropriate dot. Now think about that for a moment. In this scenario, all a nursing home resident has to do is come up to the ballot, point, and then the nursing home staff member, they would fill in the dot, which obviously does not present any possibility for fraud. All it does is sound convenient. Except for the fact that the family members of at least 8 of these nursing home residents, they told investigators that their family members were in such a state of cognitive decline that there is no way that they could have cast their own ballot. In fact, the family of one nursing home resident, they said this about their elderly mother. She would not have known who the candidates were. Someone must have taken advantage of her. And then the investigators found that another one of these nursing home residents was, quote, determined to be incompetent and even had her right to vote taken away by a court. She was not allowed to sign any legal documents because she is so impaired and would not have known how to request an absentee ballot. And yet, this woman was somehow able to vote in the 2020 election. Furthermore, the investigators found that another one of these residents, who is a woman who is not even able to recognize her own son and who believed that her own mother, who had actually died in 1995, died just a few weeks ago, well, this woman was also somehow able to cast her ballot in the 2020 election, likely due to the trusty help of the nursing home staff. And by the way, just as a quick aside, just like the staff helped these elderly residents cast their votes, I would like to help you cast your vote by reminding you to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, which forces YouTube to share this video out to potentially thousands of more people, letting the truth be known far and wide. Now, although the investigation looked exclusively at the Ridgewood Care Facility, the sheriff noted during his presentation that he expects similar scenarios to have played out in nursing homes across the entire state because, again, these directives came from the very top, from the Wisconsin Elections Commission, which is responsible for the entire state. And for your reference, by the way, there are approximately 355 nursing homes in the state of Wisconsin. And so if we do some back-of-the-envelope calculations, if each one of these nursing homes likewise had 42 residents who decided to vote in the 2020 election, that would be almost 15,000 votes total, which comes very close to the 20,000 margin of error in the state of Wisconsin. Now, of course, by the way, I'm not saying that that's what actually happened at each one of these nursing homes. However, given the sheriff's testimony, it is something that's worth investigating. And by the way, it's also worth noting that this type of nursing home scheme is not confined to Wisconsin alone, since a similar story is playing out right now over in Michigan. And I'll tell you about that in a quick moment after introducing our sponsor for today's episode. That's right, Roman. The sponsor of today's episode is an awesome company called AMAC. That's AMAC, and it stands for the Association of Mature American Citizens. Now, what I learned earlier today, though, is that you don't actually need to be a mature American citizen yourself in order to join AMAC, because even though they're an organization that's geared towards people who are 50 years of age and above, you can actually join at any age as long as you're a American-loving patriot. And so what they say is that as our fundamental freedoms here in this country are being threatened by politicians who don't even necessarily know how to balance their own checking accounts, and as there is a concerted effort to censor conservatives by this woke ideology, one thing that you can do to fight back is to join the 2 million people who are already members of AMAC. And by joining, you'll have access to 3 main benefits. The first benefit is the money-saving benefit, because by joining, you'll have access to discounts on things like vitamins, restaurants, retail shops throughout the entire country. Second of all, you will gain access to the AMAC website, the AMAC app, as well as the AMAC magazine, which gives you something that the mainstream media doesn't, which is honest news that is grounded in facts. And third of all, and this is what a lot of people say is their favorite benefit, is that AMAC has your back over on Capitol Hill. Because with 2 million freedom-loving members, they are a voice for conservatives that cannot be ignored. And so if you are a person who considers themselves a constitutional conservative, then I would consider joining AMAC. You can do so over at amac.us. That's amac.us. So consider signing up, consider helping AMAC's effort, and getting access to these excellent membership benefits. So AMAC, thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. Now, Roman in the studio, back to you. Now, earlier this month, 3 women were charged with voter fraud over in the state of Michigan, which is, of course, right next to the state of Wisconsin. And one of those women who was charged, she was charged with fraudulently filling out ballots using the names of nursing home residents without their permission. What happened over in Michigan was that in October of 2020, so exactly 1 year ago today, a clerk noticed that about 24 absentee voter applications, they were dropped off at once for processing. And since the clerk noticed that the application signatures did not match what they had on file for those particular voters, he reached out to the Michigan Bureau of Elections in order to report this incident. They then launched an investigation, and they found that these applications came from the Father Murray Nursing Home, which is over in Michigan, and more specifically, they were from residents who never told the staff members at this nursing home that they wanted to vote in the 2020 election. They then conducted a more thorough investigation, and after looking into the matter, the investigators found that a woman, a specific woman by the name of Trenae Rainey, who was an employee at this particular nursing home, she filled out these applications for these people without them knowing. She forged the signatures of these nursing home residents, and she sent them in order for them to come back to her. This woman has now been charged with 6 felonies. Furthermore, another one of the 3 women who was charged over in Michigan with voter fraud, she worked at a company called Guardian and Associates, which is a company that helps people who are in some form or another incapacitated, such as, for instance, elderly people. And so this woman, whose name, by the way, is Miss Nancy Williams, she decided to control the absentee ballots of 26 legally incapacitated people who are under her care. And she did this by taking their absentee ballot applications, the request forms that were sent out to all of the residents in Michigan. She signed them using a fake signature, and then she sent them out to the clerks in 9 different cities and townships. And in fact, she wanted all of these absentee ballots to be mailed directly to her so that she can fill them out in lieu of her incapacitated clients. Furthermore, by the way, the same woman, she also submitted a separate voter registration application for each of these 26 clients, again, without their knowledge or their consent. And after her crime was discovered, after this investigation found out who she was charged with 14 misdemeanors as well as 28 felony counts across 5 different courts. Now, different people are looking at these election fraud cases over in Michigan through very different lenses. For instance, the Michigan Attorney General, Ms. Dana Nessel, she's a Democrat, she made a statement saying that the safeguards that are currently in place in Michigan, well, they're obviously working since these fraud cases were detected and these women were caught. Here's specifically what she said in the statement. These cases highlight the scrutiny applications and ballots undergo throughout the election process, as well as the thorough investigative process that ensues when instances of attempted fraud are suspected. Likewise, Michigan's Secretary of State, Ms. Jocelyn Benson, she's also a Democrat, she made a similar argument, saying this: "These charges also send a clear message to those who promote deceitful claims about widespread fraud. The current protocols we have in place work to protect and ensure the integrity of our elections. It's time to share that truth and stop spreading lies to the contrary." The Republicans in the state, on the other hand, they are essentially saying that this might be like a canary in the coal mine, and what we have found is only a fraction of what has actually occurred. Therefore, the Republicans in Michigan, they are using these charges of election fraud to push several election security bills, such as this one here, Senate Bill 303, which will not only enforce stricter voter ID requirements, but the same bill would also, quote, "prohibit election officials from sending out absentee ballot applications unless they are specifically requested." And just for your reference, in the 2020 election, Michigan's Secretary of State, she sent out absentee ballot applications to all voters in the state, regardless of whether they requested it or not, which is why several of those women were able to get those request forms and fill them out for their clients. Regardless, the Democrats over in Michigan, they are calling this new bill a form of voter suppression, and therefore, even if it passes the House, because it has already passed the Senate, it will likely get vetoed by Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And then after that, the Republicans in the state will likely not have enough votes to override that veto, and this bill is likely not ultimately going to pass. Regardless, though, if you'd like to read more about these cases over in Michigan, I'll throw a link to them into the description box below this video so you can go deeper into those stories. And all I ask in return is that if you haven't already, take a quick moment to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. However, I would like to take a quick moment to circle back over to Wisconsin. At the end of his presentation, the sheriff of Racine County, who is the one presenting all those findings we discussed earlier, he called on the Wisconsin Attorney General to immediately launch a full investigation into the incident that he presented, including looking into how it was allowed to occur, who allowed it to occur, as well as where else it occurred in the state, which other nursing homes it occurred in the state. However, as of yet, the Wisconsin Attorney General, who for your reference is Mr. Josh Kaul, he's a Democrat, he has yet to announce anything regarding this investigation. On the flip side, however, after this sheriff presented his findings over on TV, the chairman of the Republican Party of Wisconsin, he released a statement saying this: "Anyone who cares at all about election integrity owes the Racine County Sheriff's Department a debt of gratitude for their work today. It is horrific that Wisconsin Election Commission's choice to violate state laws may have led to bad actors taking advantage of vulnerable citizens in nursing homes. It's time for Democrats, the Department of Justice, and the mainstream media to take election integrity concerns seriously." However, it is worth noting that if you've been following what's been happening over in Wisconsin in regards to their elections, then you likely know that this nursing home case is far from their only concern. In fact, just last month, in the month of September, the Legislative Audit Bureau released a fairly sweeping report which, among several other things, accused Wisconsin's election officials of engaging in what they called inconsistent administration of the election laws, troublesome management of the ballot drop boxes. They accused them of being inefficient in investigating complaints of fraud, as well as many other problems. And while that report, it didn't actually offer any evidence of systemic fraud, it did flag about 30 problems that they recommend get fixed before the next election. If you'd like to read that report for yourself, I'll throw a link to the PDF version of it. It'll be down in the description box below. Now, it is worth noting that it's been almost exactly 1 full year since the November 2020 election. However, with the reports of the cognitively impaired nursing home residents in Wisconsin and Michigan being exploited for votes, with the reports of election mismanagement over in Atlanta, Georgia, with the unlawful election instructions that were given in Wisconsin that we just discussed, and with there being approximately 50,000 of what we can call questionable ballots over in Arizona, plus several criminal cases of illegal ballot harvesting, as well as inmate voting that we're seeing play out across the entire country, well, it has a lot of people questioning whether the last election really was, as one government agency famously put it, the most secure election in American history. And while the mainstream media in this country has largely and pretty much wholesale ignored these stories, we here at the Epoch Times, we will continue to follow them and continue to present them in a factual, no-nonsense manner so that you can read into the facts and make up your own mind as to what you believe. If you want to learn more and go deeper into any of the stories we discussed in today's episode, they will again all be in the description box below this video for you to check out. And now lastly, since you've completed this episode of Facts Matter, I would highly, highly recommend that you go on over to Epoch TV and check out an awesome episode of American Thought Leaders where Jan sat down and spoke with a Harvard-trained epidemiologist, and they discussed how hospitals should actually be hiring nurses with natural immunity, not firing them. Here's a trailer for that awesome episode.
For almost 2,500 years, we've known about natural immunity. So the immunity is stronger and it's longer lasting than if you have a vaccine. Hospitals should hire nurses and other staff with natural immunity. They're the ones who are least likely to infect the residents. And we're doing the opposite, they're being fired.
In this episode, I sit down with Dr. Martin Kulldorff, a professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School and a biostatistician and epidemiologist at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. He's also one of the co-authors of the Great Barrington Declaration. We discuss the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines, the politicization of science, and the Biden administration's push to mandate vaccines for children. This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek.
If you want to check out that great episode as well as all the other phenomenal content over on Epoch TV, the link to it will be right there at the very top of the description box. I hope you click on it, I hope you check it out, I hope you subscribe, and I hope that you join us on this journey of exploring this beautiful, beautiful world through honest journalism that is based in truth and tradition. Now lastly, if you haven't already, smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already in order to get this type of honest news content delivered directly into your YouTube feed while YouTube still allows it. Also, consider hitting that notification bell so you can actually be notified of any new videos as we release them. And then lastly, if you have an Instagram account, consider following me at Epoch Times Roman. I publish behind the scenes research as well as spicy memes. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.